I know I've been on a break and I apologize. I know that I'm not going to be talking about my usual content in this post, but I do want to put this out there because I wanted to get going with something that I've been trying for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So, what I want to talk about today is my Etsy shop that has Printify products. And before we go on, I just want to remind people that I am disabled. I do have long COVID. I have not been able to work since 2023. So any of my content that I put out there is pretty much my sole income source. And it's not much, especially with the change for the other app. The other app, before they switched over to the US based server, I was actually making enough that if it had continued, I may have been able to make a living doing that. But now it is basically paying for a lunch here or there. Um, no longer paying bills, etc. So any of the content that I put out here is potentially the other source of income that I may or may not have, depending on how well the content does. So in that regard, I know that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I talked about adding things to my Etsy shop. And again, my Etsy shop does about the same as my other platform in that it pays for a lunch here or there. It does not pay my bills, at least to this point. And I wanted to talk about that today because I feel like my Etsy shop and Printify situation has been a struggle to this point. There's plenty of content out there, but with my long COVID, it's hard for me to filter out the information that I need and work with just the information that I need. And I get overwhelmed easily, and it's hard for me to, I guess, hold a lot of information and figure out which piece it is that I need to work with. And so I'm putting this question out here because I'm hoping that there are people, I mean, obviously, there are plenty of people that are more experienced and better informed about how to run a Printify slash Etsy shop than I am. And my situation is that previously I have run into the very common issue of having multiple items in your Printify shop, and then somebody comes in and buys 4 or 5 different things. And instead of making money, you actually lose money. And that's because Etsy will only charge for the shipping for one item, and then everything else doesn't get that shipping charge. And on the Printify side, if there's 4 or 5 items and they're from 4 or 5 different printers, then there's a shipping charge attached to all of those items. And because Etsy only charges for one, you sometimes end up paying paying for an order instead of being paid for an order. And so I know in one situation, I actually ended up having to pay $80 because somebody ordered enough items from different providers that instead of making a profit, I actually lost. I lost on $80. And so I've done what I can to prevent that from happening in the future, but it feels clunky and it also feels um like it's hindering my sales because what ends up happening is the price of the items that are in my shop feels higher than what it needs to be. And that's because I have to make sure that the shipping is potentially included in every single item, and then also included in a way that even if I do have somebody make an order with 4 or 5 different things, that uh that I'll still be able to make a profit if I'm paying for those different shipping situations. And in some cases, there have been times, even after making those changes, where people will order 3 different things. And because of where they're located, the shipping price changes. And so sometimes my profit margin from an order is very narrow. And because I don't have a high volume of sales, you can see on my Etsy page that I think I have less than 35 sales. Um, and less than 35 sales for an Etsy shop that has been in existence for over 10 years. But that's only because the Printify shop was added maybe a year ago, 2 years ago at this point, and most of my sales happen in person, which actually, now that I say that, I have overstock. I have overstock from some of the in-person sales that I had this summer. So I will most likely be putting these up for sale in some way through here because I have overstock items that oh, you can't see them. So it says Mendenhall Glacier, Juneau, Alaska, and then on this side it disappears. There's the glacier, and it has the Tlingit name and then the translation on these sweatshirts. So I have overstock from this past summer, and I'm thinking about posting these for sale because I missed out on all of the holiday markets this year, and I have a few other items. So I'm thinking either posting them for sale through here or my other channels and just seeing if I can get something going. But here's the thing, like I said, the reason why I'm making this post is I'm hoping if there's somebody out there who's more experienced and more knowledgeable about how to do these things, if I can maybe get some help, advice, input on uh, making my Etsy shop functional with the prices, etc. Because I feel like I'm drowning. And I also feel embarrassed because I don't know how to preface when people go into my Etsy shop and they think like, "My God, why is that $40?" And it's because I have to build in the details that can't be seen or shouldn't be seen. But then how do you communicate that, and how does it make sense for somebody to go in and think that they're buying a mug and that mug is $40? And worst case scenario about that is that sometimes that cost for that mug is the price that it is, in the off chance that a person buys that mug and then buys a sweatshirt and then buys a bag, and they're from 3 different printer providers. But then if they don't do that and the price is still put at $40 and it's unnecessary, then I feel badly. So I don't know how to do these resolutions, and if there's anybody out who has some information to maybe fix this or correct it, I'm unsure. So let me know, because I have stickers, I have things I want to put out there. There's designs that I've been creating, and I haven't posted any of them because I don't want to basically put sticker shock out there when I don't have to. So there's that.